8 more years at a pretty favorable cap hit. You brought up William Nylander there. I look at that and say, look, William Nylander doesn't play the premium position of center. He doesn't put up as many points as Elias Pettersson. Elias Pettersson's going to be in the Selke conversation for years. I'm not trying to bag on William Nylander. I'm just trying to illustrate that with where the cap is going and where it could go in 3-4 years, this is a pretty good value contract that the Canucks have signed here.
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, I think that the reports of 96 million. So I think the Canucks were willing to go 12. I think 12 was their number. I don't think it was going to get towards $100 million. I think that's just a lot of money. But look, 8 years, 11.6 AAV. You're right, it is good value. And I think the most important thing that we need to talk about here is that the Canucks now know where their cap is going to be when it comes to Elias Pettersson. They can plan for the NHL trade deadline, which is less than a week away now. If they're looking at free agents that they possibly want to re-sign. We talk so much about them not going after a rental player again. If they do acquire someone, it's going to be someone that maybe they'll be looking to extend or someone with some term. But, this piece of business is out of the way. And now the focus for this team is to move forward. Elias Pettersson, obviously happy in Vancouver. If he signed that contract, wants to be here. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good news story all around. A 7 a.m. press release drop is something I didn't see coming, but that means that they were working really hard at this to get this done. I'm pretty sure they worked well late into the night on Friday night, early into Saturday morning, and then they obviously announced the deal.
As I said earlier, we are going to have the Elias Pettersson press conference at 9:30. But I was in Bali all week, as people of this show know. So I heard reports and I read reports that potentially the Canucks might be looking at a trade deadline piece that might go beyond just this season in terms of contract. It won't just be a rental. Do you think this increases their chances at all? Do you think they'll be active in that regard on the trade market? With trade deadlines coming up on Friday here.
Are you drawing up Andrei Kuzmenko's new workout plan or what?
Yeah, exactly. I was employing it, so I had a great time just
Yes,
chilling.
absolutely. Look, I think that now I think knowing was half the battle. And I think that for a certain part of this year, a good portion of this year, until basically this week, the Canucks really didn't know what direction Elias Pettersson was leading. So for them, going about their business a week away or 2 weeks away from the deadline was a little bit difficult. And I think now you look at it, you have this stability. You know exactly what Elias Pettersson is going to be making now for the next 8 years. You know where your cap is going to be probably for this player and obviously for your two centers now in JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. So now it's time to build around, right? You obviously have the Brock Besser contract. We're going to have to talk about that well into next season as well. But you can go after targets, right? You can go after your big name guys if you're going to go big name hunting. They still will have some cap space that they need to move on from if they want to make a big significant move. But we've always said that, a dream target for the Vancouver Canucks as we head into this deadline and to solidify this team moving forward will be a top six winger. Now, whether they can make that work or not remains to be seen. However, if they can go acquire someone via a trade that has some term to bolster up their blue line, or even a depth forward that can play on the third or fourth line with some term, now you have the flexibility to do this now that this contract is done.
Lots of listener feedback in the YouTube live chat. I wanted to read some comments here. It's going to be one big anyone else segment today, folks.
Let's do it.
Nick P says, great news. 11.6 is a good deal. Mini Me saying yawn. Yep, it is early. A couple good mornings in the chat. Jeremy Lee wondering how much cap space the Canucks have for next year and what it's going to look like when they go try and sign Filip Hronek, kind of what the Canucks cap picture is going to look like. I thought that might be something interesting to focus on a little bit here, Irf, as we wait for the press conference to go live in about 10 minutes time here. The cap picture for the Canucks, the biggest thing they had to get done was this contract. And now it makes the cap picture a lot more clear. Now, we could look at Cap Friendly and give out the number of how much space they have right now, but you have to consider the cap is going to go up. You've got Tyler Myers coming off the books. Right there, you're getting about $9 million that you're going to be able to spend. So obviously you have to up Filip Hronek. That's probably going to take about an extra $3-4 million from what he's currently at, right? Like we have Frank throwing out the $8 million, and he's very adamant that Filip Hronek's number is going to start with an 8. Is that this team's next piece of business to kind of get the clearest picture possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are some reports that Teddy Bluger was a guy that they wanted to get done, but if you're looking at big picture, Filip Hronek obviously is the name, and I agree with Frank. That number is going to start at 8. Alan Walsh, there's no secret there that he's going to walk into that boardroom and throw that $8 million down pretty heavily on the table right in front of Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford. But I mean, guys like that are going to get paid, right? And I think that from Philip Roenick's point of view, you look at his body of work, guys around him in similar situations get the bag, right? It's all about that now. Agents are smarter now, players are smarter. They know the trajectory of where the cap is going. They know that teams eventually will have some money to spend, and why not go get your money, right? I think from the Vancouver Canucks point of view, there was no way they were going over a certain amount with Elias Pettersson. They were able to get that done. And I think that for Philip Roenick's point of view, you look at where you're playing, right? And I think that, you have the opportunity to play with a guy like Quinn Hughes for the most part. You're putting up good numbers, and you have a top four role that is basically yours if you want it. Now, I know he's been playing on the bottom pairing the last little bit, and they got to get that better, but you can bet in the playoffs, things are going to be different, and he's going to be eating up those big minutes. So all of this comes into consideration. I do think that probably is their next piece of business that they want to take care of in-house once the trade deadline is over. I think that that's the biggest thing. Right now, after this is done, your focus is the trade deadline. Your focus is right now, if you're the team, to win some hockey games in this next week. But from a management point of view, it's what can we acquire? How can we acquire it? And can we make our team better?
To answer the question, the original question of how much the Canucks have in cap space, it's a lot. The only defenseman they have signed for next year is Noah Juulsen and Quinn Hughes. So there's going to be a lot of work to kind of re-sign some players, rebuild. Well, I don't even want to use the word rebuild, but to build that blue line up for next year. A comment again that I read from Nick P here in the YouTube live chat. He said Miller and Pettersson for 19.6 compared to Nylander and Matthews for 24.75 is pretty decent. I alluded to it earlier. Really good value on this contract, especially when you look at the comparables. And honestly, like, I'm just thinking about what the cap might look like in 3-4 years. This feels like a contract that looks good right now and is only going to look better as it ages.
No, 100%. And Rob just said, I saw in our feed there that, he wouldn't be mad at 12 and a half. 11 point, like, a lot of people wouldn't have been mad at that. I just think that people looked at Elias Pettersson and said, is he $100 million player? I know Harm and I talked about it, a couple of days ago, and we have all week. Is he worth that much money? He probably is. But the fact that the matter is that the Canucks were able to get it done, keep that AAV under $12 million. I think that is huge for this team. I think that's huge going forward. I mean, Elias Pettersson obviously said, Vancouver's where he wants to stay. Just quotes coming out. He believes in where this team is going. And I think that that's a pretty big thing when you have it from one of the leaders of your group. I know he's a quiet guy. He keeps to himself a lot, but if he's a guy saying that he believes in this team, then there's obviously they're doing something right when it comes to, from the stability of the organization from the top all the way down, whether that's ownership, management, obviously the coaching staff and his teammates.